Build and run elastic, agile, and resilient apps with Akka. Trusted by industry titans and disruptors, Akka ensures your applications stay responsive when it matters most. With a simple SDK, powerful libraries, and flexible deployment options, Akka has you covered. Learn more at akka.io.
Good day, folks. This is Shane Hastie for the InfoQ Engineering Culture Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Inna Tokarev Sela across 10 time zones. Inna, welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Hi, Shane. Thank you for inviting me.
My normal starting point with these conversations is, who's Inna?
Who is Inna? CEO and founder of illumex. I started the company around 4 years ago. But I think the most interesting part, professionally wise, is to speak about my passion to graphs, right? Graph technology. During my first degree in physics and computer science, I fell in love with graphs, and my research thesis was around that. You might remember we didn't have all this nice software we use today, so we used MATLAB. And what I did is actually simulating geometrical forms over graphs to basically implement operational research methods and make them more efficient. And since then, I'm passionate about the graphs of neural nets and their combinations. This is what I did in my thesis, basically developing algorithms which are based on combination of graphs and neural net systems, specifically for healthcare domain. This was the beginning of my career, and then I started my long journey at SAP. And it was really exhilarating to see how much you can achieve with access to so many customers. So I was part of SAP HANA Cloud Platform, a team under the Office of CTO, and got lucky to work with companies such as Walmart, Pacific Builder, Lockheed Martin to help them with a journey to big data and cloud initiatives. And of course, building use cases and business cases and the strategy around that. This is my background. I'm a mother, and we as a family, we live in Tel Aviv, very close to the beach. So I do enjoy those morning and evening walks, seeing sunset. This is the indulgence that we have.
Tel Aviv is a lovely city. So some key elements of generative AI, and this is the Engineering Culture Podcast. So we're not going to talk about the APIs for accessing the AI tools. Serini and others, my colleagues, deal with all of that. Let's start with the cultural impacts on teams if we're bringing generative AI into the software engineering space. What is that impact for us?
Bringing generative AI to any team, there's a lot of cultural change. So given that you cleared up all these privacy issues and chosen your tool, it's important to understand how employees are going to use that. So education, what's of art of possible is imperative to any team. So in development team, we do use generative AI for testing, some code prototyping, but it's really understanding how you can accelerate the adoption. I do believe in this acceleration due to the fact that at least 30% of development are mundane tasks, which are also necessary. So not every backend developer loves to write tests, right? And this is for sure something which could be automated. We actually, from my experience, see lots of excitement in our development team around using generative AI, despite the fact that as a company, and especially in development, the age is above medium for startups. So we are 35, 37 on average, but still lots of excitement about this new technology.
You blithely passed over, let's sort out the privacy and so forth. But I know governance is an area that you're passionate about and concerned with. So it's not that easy to just get the privacy thing right and other elements of governance, is it?
Sure, governance is a big topic, and especially in data management, analytics space. To me, every aspect of data usage and software development around that historically involved lots of guide rails, right? So we have governance for data, for analytics. We have different audits and standards, GDPR, and SOC 2, and just to name a few. Right now, for generative AI, we have lack of standardization on many aspects. So we do have those EU Act initiatives and other legislation initiatives, which do place some high-level requirements. But I see that right now, majority of enterprises actually decide on their own standards, separate, and we do not have lots of standardization about that. But in general, I do believe that governance right now is not embedded enough in generative AI practice as it is, due to the fact that generative AI models are black boxes, right? And when you fine-tune, when they customize them on your own organizational data or build workflows around them, usually data scientists are mainly focused on feeding those models with test data and understanding the outputs, consistency, for example, approaches which is called RAG, to make it as customizable as possible, to make the models to understand your data. But they couldn't care less about governance. They do not understand the models enough even to customize them in majority of the cases. Again, because this technology is a black box, they understand more and more about productization of this technology. But being able to plug in generative AI the same ways as we do plug in data management analytics into access controls, into governance mechanism which we already have in our organizations is imperative. I would say even more. So far, as practitioners, we didn't really govern our interactions too much. So we did have secure access of the interactions, like security control and malicious software detection and so on and so forth. With generative AI, we much extend also on the governance of interactions. What I mean, all those proverbial $1 tickets and SUVs, we need to make sure that not only underlying data access is governed and data quality is governed, but also interactions themselves. Is someone trying to prompt engineer your generative AI? Are they asking questions which access data, which they might have access to, but the model which answers those questions is trained on the data they do not have access to, and so on and so forth. So it goes way beyond.
So what does that start to look like in practical terms? So who is holding the governance roles? How do we define those rules even?
I do believe that the future of GRC and governance roles as they are today, mainly in setting the standards, right? Setting the standards and monitoring that implementations cater to those standards. I do believe that governance as a discipline, as everyday practice, should be actually part of everyone's job, right? And especially domain experts. So domain experts think about people in sales and marketing and customer support. When you do have your context and reasoning built for generative AI, right, by data scientists, you might want to have workflows which embed domain expertise, right? So why data scientists would decide how churn is calculated? Why data scientists should decide how upsell is defined in sales, right? So domain experts, there are conflicts in data, and there are always conflicts in data, especially when you connect enough data sources. I do not think that they should be resolved on technical team side. I do believe that domain experts should be involved more, especially because we expect those new generation of tools provide self-service to data analytics on scale for domain experts. So we need to bring them as part of development as well.
It sounds to me, particularly in that transparency, that we're looking to create or bring in some level of observability in the models, in the AI tool, whether it's in the training or whether it's in the processing. How do we do that?
I believe that observability in generative AI implementation should go on 3 levels, should address 3 levels. The first one is the data layer, right? So AI-ready data. If your data is healthy enough, if you have single source of truth. If you do not have single source of truth, of course, we're speaking about semantic models which are probabilistic, and you would not like to have randomness around that. So AI-ready data, for starters. Second layer is the governance. What exactly the policies that you would like to automate on generative AI? Generative AI, of course, it's about scale, so you cannot imply everything manually. You should build automated guide rails to enforce whatever policies you decided to enforce. And the third one is this explainability layer, because if we speak about intelligent decision making based on generative AI outputs, if it's for development or for business users to make decisions, in the daily practice, it's all about trusting the results. And results, when you have this answer 42, right, as a black box, you cannot really make decisions based on that. So observability and transparency also goes to the explainability of generative AI outputs. How my prompt was understood, which data was it mapped to, what is the logic which was deducted from this prompt. This prompt goes through some certified semantics which domain experts waived, right? So all of that should be in place. So 3 layers: data layer, governance layer, and interaction layer with explainability.
I don't see many organizations doing that at the moment.
I think most of the organizations aspire to do it at the moment. I see more and more risk management requirements in generative AI projects, especially in highly regulated industries. And it goes to, of course, risk management goes to the bias and privacy concerns, but it also goes to liabilities to make decisions based on potentially wrong outputs. So this risk management on accuracy of outputs, explainability of outputs, consistency and compliance of outputs becomes the pinnacle of generative AI implementations. The second consideration would be total cost of ownership, because it's very expensive to implement and customize off-the-shelf software for the enterprise needs. So this risk management, to me, becomes more and more established as a practice. And there's plethora of solutions evolving in the space, from governance to cybersecurity to, more offline tools for policy management and so on and so forth.
Dig into that policy management, because if I think from the stance of the technologist implementing this and bringing it in, they have got to provide the framing for these 3 layers to be in place. So let's start. And you said, give us policies. Well, what does that framework, the technical implementation of apply policies look like?
Yeah, so think about policies is the vehicle to address a few things. First of all, it's about quality of data. If data is representative, if it has standards of deprecation, duplication levels, and so on and so forth, but also if it's even enough, it's distributed enough. So for example, on the bias component, there are mechanisms to basically measure that and make sure that the data which is fed into prompting or even into training is even enough. So this is for starters. And these practices with Lime and other techniques already have been used for a while. So they exist. So this is on data layer. On a policies for the governance, think about them as you might want to propagate either your data source policies or maybe your Azure ID or LDAP group policies which you have for, your email use, your SharePoint use, and all that. You want to propagate them automatically also for generative AI use and data which is fed into generative AI. So not have it as a silo, another silo to create specifically for generative AI, but basically connecting it to our existing mechanism in organizations. And interactions governance policies, they can go to, for example, recognition of patterns. This user coming from a specific organization, let's say customer success, and suddenly they try to access financial information. Maybe on purpose, maybe not. So there are different guide rails which go not only to access policies, but also to intent, right? So to understand the context of user, the context of the prompt, the context of the data. And this is where I started my introduction with graphs. This is where graphs complete generative AI semantic models to provide more and more context for those implementations.
A lot there, and a lot for us to think about in terms of what does governance look like in the implementation of generative AI, I think, some good advice and a whole lot of things that our listeners can dig into. If I can switch topics a tiny bit, or quite a bit, the gender imbalance in tech. I know that your company is over 50% women. That's pretty unusual.
It's pretty unusual and intentional. I believe the talent is there, and the talent is looking for environment which can support specific balances, right? So every demographics requires a setup which is the most adequate. And COVID taught all of us that we can be more flexible in the work environment from remote standpoint, from the hour standpoint, and other aspects as well. I think majority of software development companies, especially the big ones, software giants, are coming back to 5 days office policy. And I think it's going to be discriminative to specific demographics on a scale. So in illumex, we've been, happy and lucky to have this talent with us, but it does require a specific setting to be facilitated for sure.
So what are some of those policies? You mentioned flexibility and so forth, but what are some of the concrete things that you've done at illumex?
It starts from the hiring process. Of course, we only hire people who meet our standards. We do have a 2 days in office policy, and those days could be flexible. We do support meetings which are in core hours. It's 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., which means the majority of the people, either it's fathers or mothers, can attend them without disrupting their morning routine or their evening routine. In general, we are flexible about sick days and out of office days for whatever reason. And this proven itself because sometimes, educational schedule could be disrupted, and especially in this region, it happens. So it's, of course, you need to have home care. On the other side, it shouldn't be gender discriminative because we want to have the same support for everyone in the company. And our kids, like right now, kids average, I believe, 2.3 among illumexers. We do have those, and we also have parents to dogs, right? So some people have dogs and cats, and to me, we should support every need and cater to whatever flexibility everyone needs to. And also geographical. So geographic-wise, some employees might need full remote, right? Some employees' transmit could be, commute could be longer than others, and it should be taken into consideration as well.
Another thing I know that you're very passionate about and involved in is mentoring programs. How do we design and set up a good mentoring program?
I do believe in mentorship programs which are specifically designed for female professionals. And this is due to the fact that communication is still different, right? So being heard or speak up does not come natural or does not come at ease. And just to the same extent. And, it's all ego management in a group dynamics also comes to play. So I do believe in female-oriented networks, despite there is lots of conversations against that. And it bears fruit. So we see more and more female founders. You can look at data companies, pretty wild growth of those numbers, but we also see data leaders, right? So chief data officers, heads of data, heads of analytics, especially in this discipline of data analytics and generative AI, we see more and more female talent. And I'm super happy to see that. I think balance is everything.
What's the question I haven't asked you that you would really like to share with the audience?
I'm really passionate about what future bears with all these new advancements and all those new technologies. It could be scary for some because the change is accelerating and change is here. To me, as an industry, software development, as data management industry, we're under this overload of maintenance, of technical depth, of testing, of all, let's say, less creative tasks that we have on our plate every day. So we should embrace this innovation and use generative AI to augment our capacity. And on a professional level, I'm passionate about application-free future. So who likes to go to 30 different interfaces over the day and have different tasks and different settings? So this is where I'm personally very passionate about. And this is where illumex also helps companies to become closer to this future.
Well, a lot to think about there and a lot of good advice for our listeners. If people want to continue the conversation, where do they find you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do think the social network has lots to offer. So please do connect to me on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to continue the conversation there.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Shane.